Okay, 5b at the bottom, second line from the bottom. Ibayalu. Here's a question. Tavo lachar. So we've been talking about people are assumed to pay on time. If you're demanding late payment, then it's not so simple. So what happens if you the lender demands repayment after the due date? So due date on the loan is June 1st, and June 15th, the lender comes and says, pay me back. V'yamarlo, and the borrower says, Praticha b'toch zmani. I paid you, not only did I pay you, I even paid you early. I paid you back in January. Okay, Mahu. So what about that? Mi amrina b'makom chazaka amrina mali l'shaker. So we have two competing things here. You have the chazaka that people pay on time but not before their time. If you pay before your time, you have to bring proof or make a shua. But in this case, you also have mali l'shaker because the guy is coming and demanding payment late. You could say, I paid you on the due date, okay? But you don't. You say, I paid you before the due date. So on one hand, you have the Mali L'Shaker, which is like Amigo, saying that, you could have made a more believable claim, so therefore we accept your less believable claim. On the other hand, you have a Chazaka that opposes that says that people don't generally do that. They don't generally pay early. So which is it? Tashma. So let's try to prove it. So our Mishnah talked about the building of the wall, right, of the joint wall, rebuilding of the joint wall. And what happens if you build it, the first 4 amos. So if it's built already, we assume that everybody contributed their share to build it. Until if you claim that's not the case, that your neighbor didn't contribute, you have to bring proof. So what are we talking about? If it's after the time that it was due, and his neighbor, and the other guy says, I paid you at on time. Pshita. So obviously, that the guy is believed, right? That the guy who says I paid you on time, he's believed. So what is our Mishnah telling us? It must be talking about where he's saying I paid early, right? So we see that from our Mishnah, if you accept that inference, that the Mishnah is telling us that even if you make this migo claim that I paid early, then you're believed over the chazaka. Right, so Gemara answers, Shani Hacha is not such a good proof. Chol Shafa v'Shafa Zimnehu. There's no time there. There's no contract that says what time you have to pay, what date you have to pay. You pay, as the material is laid out. Each row of bricks is the time to pay. So, it's not reasonable to think that he paid for every brick as it was used, right? So this case is not a reasonable case, reasonably analogous case to paying on time or not on time. So let's try again. Tashma. Same case with the wall. Our Mishnah said that the two neighbors are required to contribute to rebuilding the wall up to the minimum 4 amos, but not beyond 4 amos. So samach lo kosel acher, and then we said that if one of the neighbors built, they built the wall higher at 6 feet or 6 amos, and then he built a parallel wall of another 6 feet on his property, indicating that he's about to, put a roof over it, over the two sides, and use the 6 amma high joint wall, indicating that he is going to benefit, and he wants to benefit from the higher wall. So then, so then that guy has to pay. If he's thus indicated that he wants the higher wall and he agrees to pay for the higher wall. But we don't assume that he's paid unless he brings a proof. So again, what case we're talking about? If we're talking about after the time, and again, the time is a little problematic. And he said, I paid you on time in my low. And why don't we believe him? He's saying he paid his debt on time. He must be saying I paid early. So then we see from here that we don't say, we don't rely on the migo. We still require a proof. Where it says Shani Hacha, Yamar Miyemer de Mechayvi li Rabbanan. This is a different case from a regular loan because this neighbor who built the extra wall, indicating that he wants to use the first higher wall, he's like, he could be taking his chances. He's like, we're really gonna split this wall. I don't have to, or I not we're gonna split it. I don't even have to contribute to that wall. How do I know that that they're going to rule against me, that I have to contribute? Okay, so it's not a regular kind of debt, because here we say he has to make a shua because he has less incentive to pay even on time. That's why he has to bring proof, because we don't really feel like he really feels he has an obligation to pay, because it's kind of a murky kind of case, and he's not convinced. It's not black and white that he's going to have to pay in the first place. So we don't have presumption that he's paid on time. So Ravacha says, Tashma, here's another proof. Now here we're talking about a regular loan. Guy says, you owe me $100. The borrower says, yeah, that's true. Next day they meet again, and he says, please pay back my loan. If he says, yeah, I admitted yesterday that I owed you $100, but I paid it to you, right? Then Potter, then we believe him. He doesn't have to pay. But if he now denies and says, I never said that, I never said that, that I owe you money, then he is required to pay. My love. So what are we talking about here? Nesativ loch diamarle praticha bismani. So he wants to set up a parallel between I paid you already means that I paid you at the right time, right? And when he says I don't owe you anything, that means he's saying like I paid you early. So I don't owe you the money. So we're kind of recasting what the guy's answers are. Vikatani chayev, and the Mishnah says that you have to pay. So al makom chazaka lo amrin shaker. So we don't use the migo when that he said I paid early, but he could have said I paid on time, would be believed. No, we don't say that. We say that chayev, that he has to pay. Where it says low. No, we're not. The whole idea that you advanced here, that this is what the guy is saying, is not evident in the language that the Mishnah used. Mal ein li biyadi, ein lecha biyadi. What does he mean when he says I don't owe you anything? Lo hayadar mi'olam is how I interpreted it in the first place. He's saying like I never borrowed for money from you in the first place. Not that I paid you already early. No, that's not what he's saying. That's not what our Mishnah is talking about. Our Mishnah is talking about a case where the guy says I never borrowed from you in the first place. And we have this rule that if you say I never borrowed, it's like saying I didn't pay. So there's nothing about paying early in this Mishnah, so we can't bring a proof from. So I think that is it. So we don't have a resolution for do we say which is stronger, Chazaka or Mali Bialcha, the Migo, but that I paid B'toch's money, the Migo that we don't have a resolution for that. So we just saw this again. Our Mishnah had said that if the wall gets built higher than 4 amos, and one guy builds, it clearly intends to use that as a part of a structure on his side of the property, and he intends to use the full height. So then he is demonstrating that he agrees to pay for the extra height of the border wall. What if he built a parallel wall along only half the length of the border wall? Okay, so he's only indicating that he agrees to building up the wall to 6 amos only on that part that he's built a parallel to, and is clearly intends to roof over. So Ravuna says samach l'palga, samach l'kula. No, we don't distinguish. If he's going to use part of the wall full height, then he's agreed to pay for the full height of the entire wall. Rav Nachman, or Lamai de Samach Sach. Rav Nachman says no, only as far as he has indicated that the length of the border wall that he's going to use the full height. That's what he's responsible for. Lamai de lo Samach lo Samach, and the part that he does not build a parallel wall, or doesn't indicate that he needs to use the higher the height, the full height of the new border wall. So we don't obligate him to that part. Mother Rav Huna Bakarna of the Lufta. Rav Huna agrees that if you have an attachment to the corner of the house, um, uh, so the if it's a corner, then um, then we don't. Then Rav Huna agrees that it's only that part that he's going to use, because there's no possibility for expansion in that case because it's a corner, right? So it's not like he's only built part of the wall now, and part of the parallel wall now, but later he's going to build the whole thing. So that appears to be Rav Huna's reasoning. But if there is no possibility or no probability that he's going to expand it later and use the entire length of the taller wall, then Rav Huna says, okay, you only pay for the part that he's using. Rav Nachman ba'afriza ubikvata dikshure. Rav Nachman agrees that if you have like a main beam and like a setting for cross beams, then which indicates that you're going to do like that you are going to if it's built in such a way that it's clear that you are going to expand it, then Rav Nachman would say that you are responsible for the full length of that wall. Amar Huna, Be Kave, windows. Rav Huna says, what about windows on the border wall? Lo have chazaka. That is not a chazaka that does not establish that the neighbor one neighbor has joined in the costs of building, right? The afalgav to avidle himlate, even though you made like he calls this here casings for the beams. So in other words, like even if there's indication that that even if there's indication on one side of the wall that neighbor made preparations or put in something that's going to strengthen this structure, even so, the he could say, Amina, I said, L'chi paistli, when you decide that you're going to put up the parallel wall, and then you decide to pay me, or then you agree to pay me. Well, lisra ashisai. I don't want, I want to be prepared. I don't want to start new construction then when you decide that you're going to join in with this project. So the fact that I'm putting in preparations for that now doesn't indicate that I've agreed to this. It's like when you come clean with me and you pay for the extra stuff that you've done, then I'll be prepared for you to continue your full construction. Okay. Amar Nachman, Achzik lahurde. If you have a chazaka, if you have the right to put like we call it here rafters on your neighbor's wall, well, achzik likshure. That doesn't mean that. So you've demonstrated somehow that you have that right, or that your neighbor has given you that right to use his wall, or maybe the shared wall, to support some other beam. Lo achzik likshure. So that's fine, like if you've established that there are narrow beams that you can rest on there, but heavier beams, that doesn't mean you have the right to put heavier beam, because the fact that your neighbor allowed you to put a smaller beam here doesn't mean that he's agreed for a heavier beam, because it's more wear and tear or load on the wall. So it's we can't assume that your neighbor automatically will allow you put heavier beam on there. Sure, but if he's allowed you to put heavier beams there, you can always use narrower, lighter beams on there, because there's no downside to the owner. If he's allowed heavier beams, he's certainly allowed lighter beams. Rav Yosef Amar, Achzik Lahurde, Achzik Likshuri. Rav Yosef says, no, if you have lighter beams there and you've got that right, then you've got the right for heavier beams. He doesn't think that that people give this kind of conditional permission. If he's given you permission, and you've demonstrated that he's given you permission to put beams on there, it's any kind of beam, whether light, heavy, doesn't matter. You could, some read this as follows.
How are you talking about ownership here? I thought these are two neighbors who are constructing a wall. Well, is this an owner and a tenant? I mean, it just seems like you're changing the parameters.
We're not talking about necessarily the specific case of the wall that collapsed. I don't think we're talking about that anymore.
No, we're not, but we're still talking
general...
about neighbors, right?
Yes, right.
So that doesn't necessarily imply ownership, that one owns and one gives rights to another person. If one is, if they're sharing the property, then each one would contribute to it rather than an ownership.
Well, we're talking, I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking. What the Gemara is talking about is a case where, we have, you have a wall on the border of my property. I've used that wall to support some kind of beam for other construction. You've never protested. It's a point where I can claim that you must have allowed me to do this. So now the discussion is, well, can you swap it out for a larger beam or a smaller beam? That makes sense?
I guess if you've had some agreement with the person in one way.
Right. So achzik means there's some way that you've demonstrated, if it's been there for 3 years, and you haven't protested, then from that we can assume that you you've agreed.
It's like a friendly neighbor agreement.
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea of chazaka with real estate in the first place, right? That since you can't bring real estate into your house, right? You can't pick up real estate. How do you demonstrate ownership? With a movable object, there's ways to demonstrate ownership by exercising control over it. But with real estate, there are different rules, and that's why we have this idea of a chazaka, which is generally 3 years, right? If you've occupied the land for 3 years, or in this case, you've been using the wall for 3 years without protest by the owner, then we assume that. Or by the purported owner, and we assume that the permission or has been given or it's been sold or whatever. Some read this as follows. Rav Nachman says if you've proven the right to put narrow, lighter beams on the wall, then that includes the idea for heavier beams. And vice versa as well. Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman says, Achzik l'natfe. If you've got dripping rights, right? You've been for years, you've been letting your rainwater drip off of your roof into your neighbor's yard, right? So then Achzik l'shafche. Then you can pour, you've got the right to pour water anywhere into his yard. So if your roof slopes into your neighbor's property such that the rainwater drips off it all along the length of the roof into your neighbor's property, and he's fine with that, so you have the right to pour water anywhere along into his property, anywhere along that line. But if you've got a proper gutter and a downspout and it drains into one particular place in your neighbor's yard, that doesn't mean that you have the right to that doesn't mean you have the right all along the roof line to pour water or let water get into his property. Rav Yosef Amar, no, Rav Yosef says even if you initially start with a downspout, and it pours into a particular place on the property, then that gives you the right all along the roof line. So he doesn't give a justification for that. But some read it as follows: others read it that Rav Nachman says they're interchangeable. If you have the right anywhere along the roof line, then you have the right to dump water all across the roof line. But to allow water to get into your neighbor's property from a building whose roof is urbane, willow branches, then that doesn't give you the right across the rest of the across the rest of the roof line. Apparently, using willow branches really concentrates where the water falls. So it's unclear to me, like, what's the difference between the downspout we discussed before? Maybe it's a little wider area, but the willow branches, for some reason, they're very kind of concentrates the water into one place. So that indicates that the owner only agrees to that one spot on his property where he's okay with having water drip in.
What's not clear to me here is who actually owns the water.
Well, it's rainwater, presumably. Right.
So those of us who live in the Eastern United States don't worry about that because rainwater is
Yeah.
not owned. But in the Western United States, and I think Canada is the same way, the rainwater that falls on your property is not yours unless you actually bought the water rights. And if you like put up a cistern and catch it, you can be prosecuted for theft.
Interesting. But I don't know I haven't come across that in the Gemara, right?
I have not encountered anything like that. I would have thought that because
once it falls into your property, then it belongs to you.
Actually, it doesn't belong to anybody. You can use it, but you don't. But it doesn't belong to anybody. Water is
ownerless. By Kinyan Chatzar?
Well, I'm talking about what the law is in the United States. I don't know what.
Oh yeah, no, I'm saying in the Gemara.
Yeah, so it doesn't really talk a lot about ownership of water, and it pretends that water is like a non-substance, which is kind of weird because Israel is a dry place that has a water shortage.
Well, why don't you assume that it's hefker until it falls on your property?
That's a possibility. That's possibility, right, but it's not really. I haven't seen it specifically discussed in Shas.
Yeah, I can't think of that either. I mean, there are water rights when it comes to cisterns, right? With underground water, wells, right, and cisterns and so on. So anyway, so what's the application here? Like, what are you thinking?
Oh, so the water is going from your property onto someone else's property, but if you own the water rights, it's still your water. And the person property is being drained to
once it gets onto his property. No, I wouldn't think so. Once you've allowed it to go onto his property, then presumably he can be caught with.
That seems to be the Gemara's position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, what the Gemara is really discussing here, of course, is damage, right?
Right.
Like the guy can say, "You're damaging my property by letting all this water, run onto it." And they don't seem to be concerned about the ownership of the water.
Right.
In this case, but that's not what they're discussing. Yeah. Okay. Rav Yosef says no. Even if it's a willow, this kind of willow drain, then it's the same as any other kind of drain. Rav Yosef actually acted in the case based on his thinking. Rav Nachman said, "Hamavskir b'ayis l'chavera." If you rent someone a house, and one second. Okay, if you rent a house to someone, b'bira gedola, if it's a big house, mishtamesh bezizeha ubiksaleha ad arba amos. Then you can use everything in the house up to 4 amos. Like if you have a beam sticking out of the wall, or there's a little hole in the wall, you can use it everything there up to 4 amos. That's included in your rental. Over you can also use the thickness of the wall, so the top of the wall is a shelf. But Malcolm Shanago, if it is common in that place to use that as a shelf. Although, but turbat zapadne low, but you can't use the part of the wall that faces what he translates here is the garden of the reception hall of the residence. Okay, so this is a little weird. Like, so if you have a big house, you probably have a nice ornamental garden in front. It seems like the custom was you can rent the house, but you can't use the nice front yard, right, or the nice patio in front. That's a separate thing. Like I can't really understand, what kind of deal this is. Like maybe this has to do with there being more than one house with sharing a courtyard or something. Maybe it's like some kind of a complex. So think of like a condominium or a co-op with a lobby, right? So do you have the right to store things in the lobby? No, you've rented your apartment. That's how I think.
Well, it seems like any
here.
co-op or condominium, almost like a hotel. You can have your room. You can use maybe but you can't use the main lobby for your own purposes.
Yeah, so that's what he says. Rav Nachman Didei Amar, but Rav Nachman himself said, "Afilu b'turbat." No, you can use this common area, because that's part of the rental. Like you're going in through the front door. But what about the backyard, like the little park behind it? No, that's not included for you to use for your stuff. For Rav Amar, even the backyard is considered fair game. Okay, I'm Ravina, and this is all, by the way, b'makom shenagu. Like it's the case, it's all subject to local custom anyway. So, I'm Ravina. Hi kishura de metalalta. If you have a shack that's built for shade, and it has a supporting beam that rests on your neighbor's wall. So ad tlasin yamin, if it stays there for 30 days, lahavi chazaka, up till 30 days, it's not a chazaka. Basar tlasin yamin, after 30 days, havi chazaka. That is a chazaka that it's okay for you to rest your beam there. The sukkah the mitzvahi, and if it's a sukkah, ad shiva yamin, then you have 7 days, right? So up to 7 days lahavi chazaka. Like he might be letting you just use it because he knows it's sukkahs, and and he's fine. He's like fine for you to use it until after sukkahs, but not more than 7 days. Basar shiva yamin, after 7 days havi chazaka. Of course, most people in my experience, most people put up the sukkah well before the holiday of Sukkot. So I'm not sure how that plays into this. But basically, it sounds like if you can claim that, oh, I only let you do that because it was Sukkot, but now, but now I want it down. If I don't say now I want it down, that means I'm okay with it. The chabre betina, and if you made it more permanent, you used cement to fix it there, and you didn't get any protests, then it's a chazaka right away. Like if the guy doesn't protest right away when he sees you cementing a beam onto his wall, then he's lost his right to protest. Amar Abaye. So we saw in the Mishnah the whole point of the dividing wall is to allow privacy, right? Now, two houses that are on two sides of Rishus Harabim, they're opposite, across the street from each other. This one puts a fence on his half of the roof, and the other guy has to put up a fence on his half of the roof. They can't in other words, you don't need two fences, right? Our houses face each other. We want to have privacy. There's no common wall because there's Rishus Harabim in the middle. So how do we do it? So each one of us has to build half a wall, and we should coordinate so that they don't overlap. right? So it's like there's no sense if you build half a wall on the north side of the building, and I put half a wall on my north side of the building, then what about the south side of the building? It's completely uncovered. What we have to do is coordinate so that each of us builds half a wall, and it ends up with a complete privacy screen. Umadif, and also you have to go a little bit over. You have to have a little bit of overlap.
So we're saying Hezek Shmei Hezek, right?
Yes. Yeah. So whereas my area Rishus Harabim, why are you taking this case that it's Rishus Harabim in between? I feel Rishus Yachinami. Like, let's say we're not across the street from each other, but we're on opposite sides of a third party's property, right? It would be the same rule, right? It should be the same. Where it says Rishus Harabim Itzrichale. No, we have to say it in the case of Rishus Harabim. Ma'udatema name alay sof. You might say, look, why should I have to build half of the wall? People are walking by and they're going to be able to look into your property unless you build a full wall, right? So you build a full wall. So why do I have to build, why do I have to be in for half of it? So we don't say that. Kamashwan, Diamale, Rabim Biamama Chazuli, Belil Chazuli, because you could say, listen, sure, I understand this is a public street. People go by during the day all the time. I'm okay with that. I need privacy at night, right? And at night, nobody's walking Rishus Harabim, but you're there across the street. You can look into my property. Therefore, you're still required to participate in the visual screen. You can see day and night. That's why you have to participate. Iname, or you could answer Rabim Kika Imna Chazuli. Like the people are at street level, right? So they can only see me if I'm standing up. Kiasivna lo Chazuli, but if I sit down behind the wall, they can't see me, right? Ad Chazuli Bain Kika Imna, Bain Kiasivna. You can go up to the roof. Right, so you could see me whether I'm standing or sitting. Therefore, you have to participate in the fence. And also, Rabim ki ma'ainu chazuli. The public, they're just passing by. They have to really take the trouble also they're on street level. They're going to have to really kind of position themselves to see what's going on my roof. But you're also on roof level. You casually see me. You're on the same level as me. Therefore, you have to participate in the screen. Okay, Amar. We said before, each one has to build half the screen. And they have to be not in the same place, but a little bit of overlap, right? Pshita. So that's obvious. Like, why does Rish even have to tell you this? It's very obvious. We need to tell us that the kadim chad minayu yavad. What if the first guy goes and builds his half of the screen on the north side? You could think that the other one could say to him, Shikol uzinka va'avde at kule. You build the whole fence on your side, right? I'll pay for it, but you build the whole thing. So since you've already started, keep going. So therefore, Kamashmal, and it tells us, why didn't you do the whole fence mishum de misra ashisach? Because you don't want the weight of the fence on your house. It's damaging your house. I also don't want to build the whole fence. So therefore I only have to build 1 second. You might think I could force you to finish doing it because you've demonstrated that you don't care about the weight of the fence on your wall. So you do it. I don't want to damage my wall. You already showed me you don't care. So this tells us that no, you can't say that. That since everybody knows the rule is you're each going to have to build half the fence on your wall, so I've gone ahead and done it. Doesn't indicate that I don't care. I care, but I know my responsibility. You know, you have to fulfill your responsibility. If you have a roof, second story, and you're looking into your neighbor's yard, also you have to build a fence on the roof 4 amos high so that you can't see into the yard. But you don't have to build a fence between two rooftops. Rav Nachman Didei Amar, Rav Nachman said, he said that's what Shmuel said, but Rav Nachman say, Eno zakuk la'arba amos, aval zakuk l'mechitzas asara. You don't need 4 amos. Why not? So it appears that the theory is that if you don't need a fence between two rooftops because you can always tell when your neighbor's on the rooftop, on his rooftop and observing you. So you want privacy, you know, you don't really have privacy, but you have at least you recognize when your neighbor is there. But if you're in your courtyard, like you wouldn't notice necessarily that your neighbor is on the roof. It's not at eye level, right? You wouldn't notice that he's there. So you would not you might be performing private activities that you wouldn't want to be observed. Therefore, the guy on the roof has to build a wall. But if you're both on the same level on the roof, then you don't have to build a wall.
What does it mean? Avabein gag legaglo. I mean, where's he built? Where would that? What's the presumption? Where would that? If we say he's machayev to build the maakeh on his gag, then where is this bein gag legag? In the middle of the street?
Yeah.
I mean, is it in the middle of the air? I don't know. What's the foundation?
Well, I think it means that the building is not on the border of the property, right? So I have a yard, I have a house. I don't have to fence off my roof, and I don't quite get why this is, but I don't have to fence off my roof if it's looking onto your roof. And this is different somehow than if we are have neighboring properties and can put up a fence on the border of the properties. Yeah,
so that's right on the border of the but where? How high would that be if one is building a maakeh on the gag, then, and let's say the house is 10 amos or whatever it is, then he's building a maakeh on top of that, right? So where's the bein gag legag? Is that, do you think that's the middle of the air? I mean, then that's another wall that's as high as the house plus the maakeh on each of the gagot.
Yeah, gagot is correct. It appears to be if they're on the same level as the standard case. I would think that one guy's got a roof on the third story and the other guy's got a roof on the second story. That would be analogous to the roof and the chutzner, seems to me.
So then he's building. I don't understand being gag legag. I don't know where that is.
It means that there are two rooftops that are on the same level, nearby each other, so that you can see from one to the other. Look at that the case. Gag hasamuch l'chatzer chavero, a roof that is near the courtyard. So the roof must be near the other roof as well. What I don't quite get is why is this different than a wall that divides two people's courtyard, where we say you do have to have a wall. Or was it the case that it's only if there was already a wall that you can compel rebuilding it, but you couldn't compel building it in the first place?
So there's a wall between the two of them, and so then you're putting something on top of that wall?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking.
I'm still, one is compelled to build a ma'akan hashgag, and the same thing for the other fellow. Then where are we? Well, what are we compelling in bein gag legag? There's something, another wall that's already there, and he puts something on top of that, another ma'akan. I'm not understanding something. Or you're saying he has to build? We're talking about building another fence.
You have adjacent roofs. Each one has is responsible to provide a visual screen between them.
So that should be sufficient. What is then once each one has done that, what does it mean to build something between the two gagot? I mean,
No. I see what you're. No, I think you're misinterpreting Bain Gog Lagog. No, I think you're misinterpreting. It doesn't mean the space between the roofs. It means you have to build a screen when there are adjacent roofs. Doesn't mean in between them. It means on the edge of your roof you have to build a screen. So, but if it's Rav Nachman Didei Amar, Rav Nachman himself says, you don't need 4 amos, you need only 10 tfachim. So the Gemara says, Lamai. Well, what is this about? Il has a kriya, if you're talking about it has a kriya that you shouldn't be able to see through into your neighbor's property, arba amos b'inam, then what good is 10 tfachim, right? That doesn't block your view. Il need pasal of kaganov, and if it's just to establish a border, right, that your neighbor shouldn't trespass into your property, and this is like a marker. Well, you need 10 tefachim. You just need, some small marker, right? It could be 1 tefach. What do you need 10 tefachim for? And if you're worried about his goats wandering from his roof onto your roof, then it should be like 10 tefachim is not the appropriate measure. It should be high enough that those animals shouldn't be able to wander from one property to the other, or it could get over the wall or the screen. So your answer is Leol need pasal kaganov. Really, we're worried about your neighbor trespassing on your property, on your roof. If it's just less than 10 tefachim, then the guy can say, "Oh, I just I dropped my pen and I came over to your side to pick it up, but I wasn't really trespassing." But if it's 10 tefachim high, then it's not so easy to step over. And also it's clear that with a 10 tefachim high fence means I care, like I don't want you stepping on my property, right? So you can't claim that, I thought it would be okay with you. No, if I see a 10 tefach fence, if I see just a 1 tefach border that could be decorative or whatever, if you went to the trouble of making a 10 tefachim high, that indicates to me that you don't want me stepping over it. Meisve. So, sorry, missed something. Okay, Meisve. So they asked, what if we're on a hill, right? And my yard is higher than your roof. It's a pretty steep hill. Then we don't, the rules don't, the regular rules don't apply. So what does that mean? My love ain't these cocking low cloud. Does that mean you don't need a wall at all? So what about the 10 tefach idea? Like, sure, the visual thing, not a problem, because of the topography, but you should still require a 10 tefach fence to prevent, this is a new idea, but like, why don't we apply it here? Where it says low, and arba amos. When it says you don't have to build a fence, it means you don't have to build a 4 amma fence. But yeah, you still have to build a 10 tefach fence. So sorry, still have to build a 10 tefach. How are we doing for time here? Let's go a little further. Itmar. They said you have 2 courtyards where one is higher than the other. The guy in the lower down yard has to build a wall that goes up from his border to the level of your neighbor's courtyard. and yeah, like you're responsible. So you have to have a 4 amma wall at the border, but you're lower down. You have to build the wall that's on your property to get up to the level of your neighbor's property. So this is more like terraces, right? If you have to build a wall at the edge of a terrace, the lower guy has to build up the wall at his own expense up to the level of that terrace, and then they can share the expense going up from there. No, they don't share it from there. Then the guy at the top, he builds from the bottom of his terrace up from there. Oh yeah, they do have to share it from that point up. Rav Chizda Amar, Elyon Masayeh Milamato Bonet. No, the guy in the upper terrace has to participate in the foundation of this wall, which is on the property, exclusively on the property of the lower guy.
So he has to help the lower one build up to his level?
Yes, as the foundation of the wall that they need to share. So we have a support for this idea that he has to share even the lower part. The Brisa says if you have 2 yards, one which is higher than the other. The upper guy can't say, I'm only building from my ground level up. He has to participate in the lower building. But if your courtyard was your terrace was like above the roof level of your neighbor, then you don't have to participate because yeah, it's I don't really guess why but this is similar to before that if you know that your neighbor is going to be looking into your space, then you'll refrain from, doing something that you want to do in private, which I don't know, seems to undermine the whole idea here.
I was wondering about that, because it doesn't mention anything about the size of the lower wall, except in this last clause.
Yeah, I don't get it. Not sure what the parameters are for when you're less responsible. Like when you can say, oh, you know when I'm up here, you can do your private activities when I'm not here. Okay, let's stop here for today. Pick it up tomorrow.
So his courtyard is higher, but earlier we said that if his wall is higher, he has to contribute. But if courtyard is higher, he doesn't have to contribute.
Yeah, it's very.
I'm not sure what the chiluk is here. What's the between the two?
Well, the difference is if the terraces are such that my terrace, the floor of my terrace is above the roof of your building, then for some reason, like I don't have to participate in that. It seems, I mean, you could even make the opposite case. Okay, I don't know what to say about that.
But before we were talking about 2 courtyards and here now 2 chatzerot, and now we're talking about 1 chatzer versus 1 roof that was already there with the other person.
No. This is 2 courtyards.
Right, where the terraced.
Yeah, and yeah, it's probably that if the upper terrace is sufficiently high, the owner of the lower terrace isn't going to be able to see, and therefore there's no reason to extend the partition. And the halakha, according to a note from Steinsaltz, the halakha is according to Rav Chizda.
Right. Okay, we'll pick it up here tomorrow.
Thank you.